There we go. All right, so we're recording. So it's September. We're back to our school year schedule, and this is the first AIM session for the fall of 2016. And we have Odette and Colleen with us. This is Gina Halstead. And we do this once a month, the first Tuesday of every month, as just a way of building community, providing support for ALC coaches. So today, I sent out a note last week asking if anybody had any questions they'd like us to discuss or any topics they were interested in exploring. And Odette had a couple of questions, but I'm going to wait until I know that she's back and listening before we get into those. So let me suggest that we start with Nathan Richardson suggested this topic, and it was, how do you introduce the topic of coaching to students who would benefit from the assistance but are not familiar with coaching? They've never heard from coaching. They've never heard about coaching. So how do you have that conversation? What do you say? Colleen, let me ask you how you approach it, because it would be interesting to compare some notes here.
Yeah, well, so I find, again, mostly it comes from the parents first, right, who kind of tell the kid, okay, you're going to go sit down. And so the conversation with the student is really, the first one is that initial interview when we kind of explain about coaching. So I find the best thing to do is kind of just dive right in. So I will ask some questions, to kind of, and also set them up about what's not going to happen, that it's not therapy, that, this isn't tutoring, academic tutoring. And then I just go through an exercise with them, a wheel of life, or the, core motivation, or sometimes just, like, what is it that you want? Like, what would you like to work on? Like, what do you want to get out of this? Like, what do you think you can get out of this? And then kind of jump off from there, so that at the end of it, they have an idea of how it works, but they also feel like, it was about them and they took something positive away from it. And it may even be a different idea than what their parents had, but that's why I like to make sure the focus is on them in that initial interview, so that they take away from it, it's going to be about them.
Yeah. And you are in this situation where the parents have contacted you first. Nathan may not be, because he works with college students. So he very well may be having this conversation with a student, and the conversation has not been initiated by a parent. Let me just pause for a minute. Somebody just joined us by the phone. Who's with us? Who just joined us by phone? Well, we have somebody. I just want you to know, whoever just joined us, that we are recording. And we're discussing the question of, how do you introduce the topic of coaching to students who would benefit from assistance but are not familiar with coaching? How do you even start to introduce the subject? And Odette, I held off on your questions because I wanted to make sure you were with us, okay? So what Colleen has a situation where she's already had the conversation with parents. Parents have had some kind of conversation with a student. Colleen makes sure that her conversation with the student or the client is really focused on them. Have them do an exercise, perhaps, help them think about what they would like out of the coaching, what their end goal is, or what their vision would be, what they might like to focus on. So she enrolls them in that way. And I'm just surveying what other people are doing, and then I'll chime in. Odette or our other member, any other thoughts on how you have this conversation with a student?
Well, my question is, are the parents already familiar with the coaching concept? I've had a few students who have been athletes, student athletes. Generally, parents are either already familiar with what a coach does on the field, so to speak. And so I've had a few that way. But in general, I have students who, of course, I'm tutoring. The parents, they're compensating me for the tutoring. However, I do a little bit of coaching inside the tutoring, but we have a lot oftentimes of content to cover. So I do more coaching when students are very content savvy, and then it's more about drilling and getting your head around the test. Mm-hmm. Whereas other students have content deficits, I've got to work on those content deficits so that they can see their scores improve. So the parents want to see that as their end result. And so if you ask them what they would like to see happen, they'd like to see their student, I'd like to see the ACT score go up 4 points, or I'd like to, that kind of thing. So I guess it's kind of, for me, figuring out how to, if it would be something additional in terms of, instead of trying to wrap it, because I think I've been trying to enroll it or wrap it, include it with the tutoring, and I don't know if that's really working as a model.
Yeah, so that's a little different focus, and why don't we go ahead and jump to that? We can come back to this conversation with the student. So Odette, just to give a little bit of background, is a college prep tutor. So you tutor students on the SAT and the ACT and help them perform better, help them learn the materials they need to learn, and also learn the strategy, I'm assuming, of the test taking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it can be a challenge if that's what you're known for, if that's what parents are coming to. It can be a challenge to then add additional services or migrate and evolve to a different focus. And coaching isn't as tangible to explain, perhaps.
Right. Yeah.
Parents get higher SAT or ACT scores that you're known for, that they understand. So how do you quantify coaching? Let me share my thoughts with you on that. The way I approach it is, because I work with students who are going through the college application process, and my focus with them, it has nothing to do with improving their SAT scores. It doesn't really have too much to do with improving their grades. It has, so the way and I'm not a college counselor. I am not familiar.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. All right.
I am not familiar with the 3,500 institutions of higher education in the United States. So what I tell parents is that an SAT tutor, an ACT tutor is an expert on that test. And you are helping your client become an expert on that test, on the contents and how to take it. A college counselor is an expert on all the universities and colleges, and will help your student better understand, or their client better understand all the alternatives. I'm an expert on helping your child, helping the student be an expert on themselves. So and I'll do this to answer both questions. From a parent's point of view, it's their child has spent 12 years learning about all kinds of things outside of themselves. And from your college tutoring point of view, your test tutoring point of view, you're helping them really solidify the contents, particularly around the ACT and the SAT, and how to take that. And I am broadening that to helping them be an expert on themselves, so they can learn about themselves, so that they can make better informed decisions about what kind of school and what kind of program would be appropriate or fitting for them, and also so that they can present themselves in a way that goes beyond, here's what I like to do. Right. So when I start with a student, I always ask them, let's pretend that I'm an admissions counselor for a college, and if I would ask you the question, tell me a little bit about yourself, what would you say? And almost always the response is something like, oh, I like to play soccer, I'm on the choir, I'm a pretty good student, I work hard, I have a lot of friends, you know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I tell them and the parents, my job is to help you, the student, go beyond what you like, to be able to articulate who you are. Mm-hmm. So that the answer to that question might sound something more like, I'm an extremely social person. I'm particularly adept at helping people feel included. I get my energy from being part of a team. I've played soccer since I was a kid. I don't do it. I'm not planning on going to the Olympics. I do it because I really enjoy helping a team, being part of a team, working towards a goal and making sure everybody feels part of the team. I'm on the choir for the same reason. I'm on the choir not because I plan on singing opera, or because I want to do this professionally. I'm in the choir because I really like meeting people outside of my ordinary circle of friends. Again, I'm kind of the ambassador and helping the new people join in. I really enjoy the opportunities we have to sing at the Red Sox game, or just to take a trip to New York and sing at Carnegie Hall. These are all opportunities I wouldn't have. And I'm looking forward to doing the same kinds of things in college. You know, that's a very different kind of discussion.
Right.
So both for a student and for a parent, that's an example that I would give.
Thank you. That's awesome.
And then the second part of it is, once they know themselves, is how do you handle the stress? So less stress, more smiles. I mean, that it comes down to that for me. You know, then the second part of the work could be helping them manage the process so that it's a learning experience, and so that it's can even be fun and pleasurable for everybody involved. So less stress, more smiles.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Awesome.
So Odette, that's what I say. How does that kind of resonate with your situation and what might be possible for you?
Well, actually, my tagline on my Facebook page is "Master the test without the stress." So I already addressed that, and a lot of parents have conversation around test anxiety with me. Oh, she's so anxious about tests and so on. However, I think it's a mix. My people basically have been telling me that I'm marketing myself to the wrong. I need to market myself to a different ideal client. Because my ideal clients that I have, my clients that I tend to work with, are parents that they're, if they're going to budget between getting the higher grade so you can get a scholarship, or making you feel more warm and fuzzy, they're going to go for the what's going to get you the higher grade because I need you to get a scholarship, right? So, whereas a different client base might more so be inclined to address both issues fully. Oftentimes, once the parents get the results, they're not really so much interested in coming back and doing additional investing to address the anxiety around testing, because they feel as though the child has performed well or well enough to get the scholarships that they required, and now they're ready to move forward to the next thing. So that's kind of where.
Odette, I'm kind of curious because about your situation, because I was telling Gina earlier, so I'm actually I'm part of a group, an educational consultant group that offers college counseling and tutoring, and then now academic life coaching. And so the college counselor kind of presents me as almost like the missing piece, right? So they have the test scores, they have the grades, then as to Gina's point, then what's the next thing that's going to make them stand out on a college application, and what is going to help relieve the stress of that application process?
Right.
And that's how they kind of sell me to the parents.
My challenge there, well, not a challenge per se, but I am aligned with a college counselor he's an educational consultant. And oftentimes when parents go to him, he'll say, well, your student has this, 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 and this. They really need to raise their score on this test or that test. if they need to raise their score, the person I would suggest you speak to is Odette, blah, 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 blah. And then so I get referrals from him as well. It's just, but they're referred so I haven't really discussed with him broadening our relationship. I hadn't really looked at it that way. He's kind of been my feeder for students, not all the time, but you know, when we have a good run, we have a good run. Other than that, I'm out in marketing and I have other parents who are referring students back to me and so forth. But that's an interesting option that I could offer, except probably not with him, because then I don't know if I'd be offering two things inside that puzzle. You know what I mean?
I was thinking more just for yourself personally, you know, to your clients that you already have.
Okay.
Kind of like beyond the test, you know.
Okay. No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. You know, maybe if I do it more in a workshop. I have been, one of you works in groups? Is it Gina or is it you, Colleen?
It's not me, but Odette, I had the same question for today. I wanted to ask if anybody is doing group coaching and how's that working out, because I'm in a situation where I think I could do that. And yeah, so I'm kind of curious as to how that works.
Yeah, that's definitely what I find. Sometimes I do workshops, and in my workshops I do testing strategies, and I also have a kind of a system that I built out that I work with the kids on or talk to the kids about, and to kind of give them to wet their whistle, so to speak. It tends to be for my younger students. I do have middle school students that are private and boarding school students. So those students are 8th grade. However, the challenge consistently is when parents, they're bringing their kid to the workshop, they're putting them in there to hear testing strategies because they want them to be able to start prepping for their SSAT. And then the students don't really, it's the same problem I have with lunch and learns. The parents aren't there, so the students don't really know how to translate the information. They're there in a group, they often know each other. That when I'm not speaking, they're talking to each other about other things, they're hanging out, they're laughing. Then when they're done, they all go out to eat. Like, they're not discussing with their parents, oh, she had a strategy around tracking my progress that I should, you know, they don't. So I'm kind of figuring out if I need to have the parents come in to the entire workshop, or if I need to require them to be there for the first 45 minutes when I go through the actual session, because the workshops are like 3 hours total, because I go soup to nuts about the entire test. So even if you don't prep with me, you still have to understand the way the test works, and you can feel more comfortable self-prepping once you leave. However, you know, so that's what I'm saying. So now I'm looking at, well, maybe I need to have the parents come in, because if the parents come in and they hear my process, then that gives them kind of a little feeder into how things would work if their child were to work with me outside of the test prep side. So.
And you may even want to consider having a workshop just for the parents, introduction to test prep.
Right.
Because the parents are the decision makers with this, and it could be a 45-minute or an hour. It could be done, you know, on your own or through a high school or some kind of a continuing education kind of program. Back to the group. So, you know, I'm not currently doing any group coaching. I have. There are a couple of really good training programs on doing group coaching that I could recommend. And what I might suggest is when I send out this recording, I'll send out 2 different training programs for group coaching that you could take a look at. There's also a good book, and I'll put that in there. Okay. What these courses help you do is first of all, think about how would you structure a group coaching kind of program. How do you structure it so that it's in compliance with the International Coach Federation, and you know, all those guidelines. And what are some tools and techniques and ways to avoid pitfalls, and how do you handle certain kinds of personalities, and it's a lot of information like that that's very, very helpful.
Okay.
So that might be a resource for you, for both of you.
Thank you. That would be great.
Yeah.
And if anyone is listening to the recording and they are doing group coaching, feel free to respond in the group and let us know how you're doing.
Yes.
There was somebody in a previous session, Gina, didn't we? Who did we have here that?
Could it have been Brenda?
I was just about to say something with a B. I was thinking Barbara, but Brenda, let's go.
Might have been Brenda. Yeah, I don't know.
I saw it in the group. I'm going to go back and look, but someone was in the group and they were commenting on the fact that they are doing group coaching through a school and it's going well for them, kind of thing. So, but they had posted not too long ago, so maybe about a month or less.
Okay. Let's figure that out and reach out to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the things to, just in a broad context with group coaching, what you need to pay attention to is to allow each individual to have the time to answer questions and process for themselves, in the structure. So just as in a coaching session, you would present a question and give the client time to think about it. You need to do that in the group setting as well. What's different about group is that then when you're with a client, you present a question, the client responds, you can often deepen their response individually. If you have a group, what are some ways to do that? One way is to ask a couple of people to share their reaction or response and kind of coach them through the next couple of levels, and prompt everybody else in the workshop or the audience to, as I'm asking these questions, make sure you're thinking about your reaction to them. Another way is to break them into pairs or triads and give them some questions to be asking each other to deepen the learning. So those are the kinds of exercises and tips that a coaching program, a educational program on group coaching would help you learn and think about and solidify.
Right. Yeah. It's also important to note who is the impetus behind their presence there. Because if it's like, Mom thought I should be here, then those are the kids that during your breakout sessions are going to be talking about music and did you see so-and-so at school, and trust me, having taught classroom SAT and so on, where they're not really so much focused, but Mom is like paying for them to be there. They're like off on a tangent the second you put them in a group. So that's something to be mindful of in terms of breakout sessions with teens. So.
Absolutely. And on taking that and taking one step further, you will notice that that in any group there are going to be some people who are very vocal and others who are very quiet. And what are some techniques to like when you ask a question, say, I'd like to hear from somebody who hasn't spoken yet. Something like that to help
balance.
Easier for someone who hasn't participated to participate, and to keep the volume down on someone who's been very, very, very vocal.
Yeah, definitely.
So the management of the group is a component of this. The wonderful thing about group coaching is that from a price point of view, you can offer for each individual who's participating, the entry point, the price point is lower than it would be for the one-on-one. So you're opening, you're broadening the number of clients that you could appeal to by changing your price point. And if you have enough people in the group, your dollar per hour rate goes up because you have more people. So that can be a really nice equation. It can be an also an interesting entry point into one-on-one. If you want to continue one-on-one, people get to know you through group, and then they decide to continue with you on one-on-one. Yeah. So Odette, did we satisfy your question about different way your question about moving from the SAT tutoring to coaching and how to accomplish that? You mentioned that perhaps needing a different thought of a different ideal client. What comes to mind with that?
Well, mainly with regard to the ideal client, it's price point related. So it's the student, the parent who, I guess, in this day and age, you're not saying that, oh, they have an open checkbook, but it's the parent that sees the investment in the self-awareness piece. That is the parent who is more so my ideal client. Whereas that seems very esoteric to many of the parents that I currently work with. It seems like a would be nice. It's an add-on. If I have time, I'll come back around to it. Whereas, so being in front of a parent that sees the essential nature of that understanding is definitely how I would more like to move my ideal client search. And then also figuring out where that ideal client is, how do I reach them, that sort of thing. Everyone, Facebook ads or, that sort of thing. Social media, well, they're not on Instagram so much, maybe. They're not, they're not in a lot of the social media spaces. So they're more in LinkedIn, they're more in Facebook. So maybe doing some things through LinkedIn and Facebook, but then also just being available. And I found that speaking at schools is great, but unless you have the parents there, the lunch and learns, the kids are like, that's great, but they're not, that information is not transliterated. It's in and out. They're gone. They're not going home to mom saying, I've got to work with this lady. So, yeah.
So finding those either perhaps school districts or other venues where the parents
right
who would see the value in this.
Right. And athletic parents see the value. I think athletic program parents see the value because they want the ones that are really into their child, high performance, moving through getting scholarships to higher education based on their athletic abilities, see the importance of, if nothing else, just helping them to get their schedule together to make sure they're getting their projects in on time so they can maintain their grades, so that they can get as much time on the field, so they can be seen by the schools that are, all of those kind of things roll in together with athletic parents get it. So I've been talking to a couple of my neighbors that are coaches and things like that work in athletic programs in local schools. So, yeah.
Wow. So what's the next step for you then?
Knitting it all together and actually acting on the information, presenting it. A lot of times people are like, well, where can I see some more about your information and things of that nature? So, I had a website, I took it down. Now I've got an About Me page. I'm working with that. I'm going to redo my website again. So I've been working on copy a lot. So now it's just about implementation, I think, is just basically where the pieces all come together.
Right. So did your question get answered?
Absolutely. I believe so. I don't know if anyone else had anything else to offer, but I believe it was answered by listening to your process. It definitely sent my mind in another direction.
Good. And let me welcome Nathan. Hi, Nathan.
Hi, Nathan.
So, Nathan, we held off on your question because I wanted you to be here. Okay. Feel free to put your voice on there.
Okay.
Nathan actually had the very first thing that I mentioned, which was, how do you talk to a student about coaching? And Colleen, would you mind just a summary of what you do? And Odette, perhaps you if there's anything else you'd like to share, and then I'll share my thoughts as well. And Nathan, if there's anything else that you would like to expand upon with that question for our clarification.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Before you start speaking, I'm going to jump in and let you all know I have a student at 1. So I'm going to be jumping off in about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, so Odette, you go first then.
No. Well, Nathan didn't really. I was just saying that before Nathan started speaking, so that I wouldn't interrupt him while he was speaking. So, but go ahead, Nathan. I'm fine.
Oh, okay. Was it Colleen that was gonna
Talk
about what she does?
Is there anything? So your question was, how do you even introduce this topic if a student doesn't understand coaching, doesn't know about it, isn't familiar with it? You know, what's the conversation? Anything else that you'd like to add to that question?
Like I said, I look at it as a common theme, even in academic advising when I'm working with freshmen. They don't really have anything in their past experience to really relate to what we as academic advisors do. And I find that as an academic coach, they may have ideas of us, construed with like tutoring, some guidance counseling, but really there's no one that really satisfactorily is a good example to be able to relate to when trying to explain what it is we do and the value that we can provide to them. Because I look at it as, I think we create the conditions for them within which to achieve greater self-awareness, with the ultimate goal of being able to take that awareness and channel it into some constructive efforts that will, in the long run, be able to contribute to being able to achieve more with less without having to, what is it called? With less, I want to say less input. Is the idea is that we teach them, efficiency. We teach them, construct. Oh my gosh, the words. We teach them how to use creativity, inspiration. We bring all of this together to be able to help them. To be able to be to be able to pursue or create more of their potential, to bring more of them to their work. Ultimately, I'm just reaching for words. But
so Nathan, all of what you say is kind of what I try to convey to them too, but I do use that word coach.
Okay.
As analogy, because even the kids that don't play sports,
yeah,
they kind of had an idea of what a coach does. So what you were saying about, giving them the conditions and creating the conditions for them to move forward. So kind of like what an athletic coach does, I tell them, what a coach does. The coach isn't necessarily teaching you. You have the skills and the talents, but the coach is providing for you the guidelines and the framework.
I like
in order to take your talent and skills and improve and get better, and also to contribute to the team. And then I also stress the same things that you were stressing about helping them understand how they learn, what their values are, so they can make decisions and they can take actions and they can demonstrate leadership. And, and emphasizing that leadership is more of a personal thing about demonstrating to themselves and, following their passions and their interests and improving not only to others, but also to themselves, what's important to them and how to act upon it. So, but I do use that coach analogy because they do seem to understand that.
As you were talking, the word deliberate came to me, is the idea that sometimes many of the things that we learn almost accidentally. Meaning that it really has to do with a particular teacher that we may have and what works for them. And it may or may not work for us, but we tend to try to adopt it, and we don't really bring what it is that we're doing, that, like thinking about learning, we don't really bring it to that level, that deliberative level, where we could say, is this working for me? Which really kind of sets into motion the possibility that there may be more than one way. So we open up, I think, a pathway for possibility and possibilities into different ways of being productive. And So yeah, having this little conversation, just really spins some brainstorming to really, because I think that, if other than just words, whatever it is that we say, we have to convey through our nonverbals, through emotion. We have to inspire them to want to, go down this particular path. So, and there's that rationale behind why, but also there's that affectation that we want to also access within the student to really get them passionate about wanting to pursue this. So I think that those two aspects are really important to address whenever we're speaking with students.
I like the word deliberate also, and I'm sorry I'm going to have to jump off, but I like that word because I think it brings two things. One, the sense of intentionality, and then two, also using thought. Whereas a lot of times, and responsibility for young people is a big thing. I used to go through this. My son is actually turned 23 today. So I went through it with him, and I have a little one, and I'm going through it with her, where it's not the teacher's job to make sure that you know. It's your job. So you have to take responsibility for learning, just like you take responsibility for your activities and all of those sort of things. So it just helps understand and I think relay the concept of education is not being done to you, it's done for you and through you kind of thing. So I like when I do my little pep talks with the kids, I try and throw that in there and just remind them that, my job. And then also there's a pride thing with kids that's really big. They don't want to look as though there's something they can't do because there's so many adults that look at them as though there's things they can't do. You're just a kid. And so, so with me working one-on-one, especially in tutoring, students tend to, they want to be, not so much they want to be right, but say, for example, they didn't do their homework. And so what I can tell when they didn't do the homework and they just kind of went to the back of the book and circled the answers, right? Because I can tell. And so what I always tell them is be right with me. I'm your confidant. I'm the person that you can be right with. Be wrong with, rather. I'm like, be wrong with me so you can be right on test day. So don't be so focused on keeping your self-image intact that I can't give you a 0. It's not gonna affect your grade, but it will affect your outcomes. And you want to go to the school, so I need you to promise to be wrong with me, and then you'll be right on the test. So take a risk. But anyway, all right. So I'm looking at the clock. I've got to go. But thank you so much. I appreciate everything that you all have shared with me and allowing me to share as well. So I will look forward to hearing the recording and seeing you all next month.
Okay, thanks, Adele.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, the other thing I would add to these wonderful thoughts and comments is asking the question, what do you want to be? What kind of student do you want to be? What kind of an athlete do you want to be? What kind of a musician do you want to be? Start with a B question, because it tends to get them away from what they want to do and think more about the characteristics or the habits or the mindset. And then that opens up a much richer discussion.
Yeah, I like that.
I might not start, well, I might start with coaching is about 3 things. It's about what do you want to be, what do you want to do, and what do you want to have. And let's explore all 3 of those, because most students and most parents are focused on the what do you want to do. Set your goal and start moving towards that goal. But the who do you want to be, or what do you want to be, and what do you want to have? I want to have peace. I want to have fun. I want to have whatever it happens to be. So it does not necessarily monetary. What do you want to have? But what else do you want to have in your life?
Yes.
It boils down to those 3 things.
Yes. I like that. I can definitely appreciate that as a great way to ground the conversation and keep it again, productive, kind of moving forward. And again, I like how the idea of a coach is somebody who, we acknowledge the talent and the skills of the student, and speak about the role that the coach plays. As the coach isn't the center of the relationship, is that it's really about the student or the athlete, and it's to them and for the what do they say? It's for their benefit, in being coached, that they have that object to become better at what they do, to be more productive, to be more dynamic, all those things that would make them the leader, the champion, really, at what they do. I worked with a group of athletes, and they definitely were very motivated. And I could tell that the workshops that I gave the same workshops to them as I would for academic, like time management, study skills.
Mm-hmm.
And the athletes definitely had a better appreciation of those concepts, and were willing to experiment with them. Whereas I found that many of the other students were kind of just more like ready to default down the path, that with the idea that if it's not broken.
What do you make of that?
Yeah, it's, I think it's partly to the idea that society and what we value is that we don't show the hard work that goes into into the final product of what a person becomes. Instead, we only see the end, and as a result, I think we can kind of shortchange ourselves, making judgments that we're only, that maybe we're not good at this, or only so good at that. And so I think we're less likely to try, to really put that effort out there. One of my teachers, said to me, and I pass it on to my students, one of my professors, is that, to get to the level of a B plus is really 20%. To make the difference from that B plus to an A is 80% effort. And that really makes the difference. And I really have that heart-to-heart with students about, there's your difference, and it's about really squeaking out that 80% to move, expending that 80% effort to squeak out to that, to move from that B plus to like an A. And if they want it, there are real practical strategies and tools that we can offer, but they have to ask themselves if they're ready and willing to be able to carry through with that commitment. And I've seen some great results, and students come back and they're like all glowing because they never saw themselves as an A student before. And when they just do these strategies, and it's not hard, it's just consistent, small, consistent steps. And I think that's what makes it the 80%, is because it's not just about being able to study all night for an exam, because that can get you to the B. But so yeah, I would say that it's just the separation of the work from the final product, and that I think it's kind of students may not have a realistic understanding of what it takes, and what investment means in getting them to where they may want to go. They kind of are prone to make blanket assumptions. That if it doesn't work the first time, that, oh well, this is just what it is, and they don't really question if it can be different. So, yeah.
So, well, let me ask, is your original pondering of how do I even introduce this? How are you feeling about that now?
Yeah. I'm somebody who is very verbose, so I guess what I would struggle with is really being able to encapsulate it in a few short sentences that doesn't overwhelm the person I'm talking to. In my head, I'm comfortable with all these words and ideas. I prefer it, but when talking to people, it's being able to being able to be much more brief and summarize the main points. I like being able to open the conversation with the questions that you asked to really, and I think working what I have to say into the conversation in a way, allowing a certain amount of impromptu to really unfold. So I have to step back and work on being less, trying to be less for the student. And really allow the student to come up with the answer about what is the value. Because ultimately, they will be selling themselves the service, not me trying to sell it to them.
Right. Yeah, so the next level, asking those, so you have 3 questions right there. What do you, who do you want to be as a student?
Yeah.
And they'll come up with some words, and then you can go down the next level. What would that be like? What would be different?
Yeah.
What would that open up for you? You know, you can coach them on each of those, and say those would be the kinds of things we could work on. You know, at the end of the conversation, all and more, all those and more.
I like it. I'm thinking of those words: to have more, to have better. Really look at those adjectives that would really indicate that a person is really making strides, positive strides, again, towards goals, towards having goals, which may be new for students. I know the client that I have now, some of the coaching that I do, it's really interesting to see how something as innocuous as a simple question is built upon to create an insight that he's just kind of reeling from and walking away from the session going, you know, I have to talk to my mom about this. I have to think about this more, to really see that he would have in a million years never have been able to take him down those pathways of questions. And that's what I see is, again, one of those great values I think that we provide, is that, you know, we oftentimes can get locked in a mindset, and the value of a coach is to be able to give us the keys to unlock those perspectives that are also there, but which we may not be able to pay attention to because we're so focused on the path we're on, or the perspective we are, you know, that we're currently employing. And seeing him come back from that, and it enlarges his ability to relate from a larger perspective, where then he's able to see real decision and real choices. And that's what I've noticed about a value that we provide.
You know, in terms of explaining this or having a succinct conversation with a student, perhaps capturing you have all wonderful thoughts, capture them in whatever way works for you.
Yes.
You know, and distill them again. What would work for you for capturing and distilling them?
Yes. Again, I think it's again, I think what's going to work better is, rather than trying to come up, you know, with a speech, it's really to be able to learn the language of the potential client and being able to adapt that with our own coach speak. You know, that we can reframe or that we can rephrase in a way that will introduce what we do, while in the very act of introducing the idea of coaching and what we do and what its value is we're actually giving them an actual instance of what it is that we do, while we're working to educate them about the value of coaching.
And that is actually what Colleen had mentioned very early in our call before you joined us, that she will do Wheel of Life or one of the other exercises with a prospective client, just to have them experience what might this conversation look like.
Yes.
What might be different about this? Yeah, the Wheel of Life is a great one to start with. I really also like wait, let me find it here in the workbook. I think I've said this before. I like this, and having them think about something in their life where the first time they tried it, they felt like how am I ever going to be able to do this? This is impossible. But now they're a master at it. They could do it with their eyes closed.
Yeah.
And then step them through what was it like before you even tried it the first time? What were you thinking when you tried it? What helped you? That's where a lot of people quit. When you try something new and it's really different or scary or uncomfortable, a lot of people stop right there. But what motivated you to move forward? And then to the point of mastery. And then that opens up a whole conversation of how are you motivated? How could you apply this to another area of your life where you're stuck right now? Or that's feeling kind of overwhelming or cumbersome. And just use that. That's another exercise that I love doing with a prospective student because they can all relate to it.
I love that. That is really some great. I'm all about prompts, and these questions are wonderful to be able to get them, to get them becoming part of that.
It's getting them in the conversation. It's having them do more talking than you. I love more talking than you.
I love it because, I actually, some great news, I actually got offered an opportunity to teach in my advising capacity as an academic advisor. I'm now going to be co-teaching 3 sections for this first semester.
Oh, congratulations.
And having the freedom to develop the curriculum. So thank you.
That's great.
What will you be teaching?
So it'll be, they're 1 credit orientation sessions. That will be, so it'll be 8 sessions of 3 sections of 8 classes every other week per semester. And we basically will be working with introducing students to the resources of the university, but also learning about how to transition successfully, being able to develop appropriate skills, time management, study skills, and really looking at what it means to be successful throughout their time here in university. And then we really start looking at being able to get them to interacting through different exercises and little 1-page kind of reflections that we'll be having them write. And then using that to get them to create a final project about what they want to do during their time here. And kind of creating an action plan for them moving forward.
That's fantastic.
So, it's so exciting.
Congratulations. So a thought that came to me, the student wheel of life that you could do a college student wheel of life. Just play around with those categories.
Exactly.
How are they feeling about their roommates, about their study skills, about their, I don't know, you'd know better than I. It might be kind of interesting for them to do in the very beginning and then again at the end.
Oh, yes. I love that. I love that. That would be a great tool because, again, being able to make sure that they see the change and the growth. And that is one of the basis upon which we create the grade, the final grade of the class, is not where a student starts, but where they finish.
Yeah.
And we kind of have a final one-on-one as part of their kind of final exam, in addition to the final reflection about what they've learned and what they can take with them leaving the class.
And what they've learned about themselves.
Yes, yes. I love that. I love that.
Well, keep us posted on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just know that so many of the ideas and concepts from my coaching training
That'll be perfect.
Have really fed into what we're doing with the curriculum. So, yeah, thank you.
And thank you for the questions that you brought to us.
I look forward to this so much.
So I'm eyeing the time. We started a little late, so I'm going to go a couple minutes later. But let me just ask Colleen, and anything else that's on your mind?
Oh, thanks for asking, Gina. No, as usual, the session's been great. I picked up a lot of stuff. I actually have an initial interview this afternoon. So I'm thinking of now changing a little and incorporating some of these things that we talked about today, because it's all good.
Yeah, fabulous. Good luck with that.
I love it.
It'll be interesting to see what's different.
Yeah.
when you offer something different.
If I could just add a plug to the recording.
Yeah.
Is just anybody who is thinking about, is this worth the time? It's worth this time and much more. I get so much out of these sessions.
Oh, great.
I just find them so enriching and inspiring. And also, again, that just the information. I mean, I have like 4 pages of notes from just 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a real treasure to have, to have this opportunity and to have people like you who take an interest and take your time aside to be able to help us. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. And also thank you for the questions that you pose. Those are important because, I don't know what's on your mind and what you're wondering about. So yes, to anybody listening to the recording and both of you, thank you for the questions that you present because that provides the context for us to have a valuable, productive session.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, we'll see you again in October. First Tuesday in October is October 4th.
Great.
Same time. And in the recording, I'm not sure if you were with us, Nathan, when we talked about group coaching. I will be sending out, there were some questions about group coaching. I'll be sending out with a recording information on 2 group coaching and a
Okay. All right. I look forward to getting that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much again, Gina. Nice to see you, Nathan. Have a good day.
Good week and good month.
See ya.